This is a recording with my very good friend Cameron John Robbins, the gentleman artist. And what we're proposing to do here is going to look through a series of portraits of historical figures as painted by the great man himself. And I will give my indications of what I see in a face. We will look both at the portraits and I will put some images then of those particular individuals beside them. And we'll discuss from both our perspectives and see where the lines meet. So, Cameron, it's over to you. I'm going to start sharing the screen and we'll choose the first image.
Okay. So we have Ulysses S. Grant, and he was not the next president after Lincoln, but the one after that, but knew Lincoln very closely and worked with him directly during the American Civil War. But Grant is actually one of the finest presidents the U.S. ever had, according to some historians and biographers. Not a lot of attention has been given to him, but those who have paid attention and actually analyzed his accomplishments as president and as an ambassador for the United States after his term as president have reached the conclusion that he was indeed one of our finest presidents, greatest positive impact. Again, a very interesting and multifaceted person, as most people are, but especially those who achieve high offices and accomplish great things tend to be quite, shall we say, extreme compared to other personality types. They just manifest more extreme traits in multiple dimensions than many people.
And if I can ask you, because I'm fascinated by Grant anyway, if I can ask you, what particular qualities were you especially looking to capture in this portrait?
There was something about his eyes in the photograph from which I painted this, just a penetrating gaze, a perceptive gaze. He was a somewhat diminutive person in terms of stature. I think he was only something like 5'3", 5'4", something like that. He was a brilliant and bold horseman. In fact, in his West Point class, or out of his West Point class, he was regarded as the most brilliant horseman in an age when horsemanship was massive. And he would tackle and tame the biggest, most aggressive horses. He had this magic with them. And he was also one of the most, let's say, assertive, I don't want to say quite aggressive, but assertive of the Union generals in terms of getting into battle. There were a lot of Union generals during the American Civil War who were brilliant in any number of dimensions, but were very reluctant to fight and very quick to disengage when they could have ended the entire conflict if they'd just been a little bit more assertive, which caused Lincoln a lot of the stress that you mentioned earlier. Grant was the opposite. There's a brilliant quote or conversation Lincoln had with somebody. Grant has been criticized, or was criticized during his day, as being a drunk, which is not historically accurate. There was an incident where he, as a young officer, was found to be drunk on duty. It was a remote outpost in Oregon or something like that. And it was a really toxic environment. His commanding officer was kind of a bully and a tyrant, apparently. And Grant was just miserable being so far away from his wife and family. And he got a little too into his cups on that occasion. Well, that reputation followed him for the rest of his career, and in some circles still follows him today, and is not strictly accurate, because after that he was so ashamed he didn't exactly stop drinking, but he got pretty close to being a teetotaler for the rest of his life. Anyway, when Lincoln was considering appointing Grant as the overall commander of the Union Army, somebody repeated the rumor saying, it's like, are you sure you want to appoint him? I hear he's a drunk. And Lincoln responded, find out what brand of whiskey he drinks, and I'll send him a case of it, because this man fights, and that's what we need.
Yeah, it took some time for Grant to be appointed as the supreme commander. Obviously, there were several other generals before him, and they didn't quite have the results that Lincoln desired.
Yeah.
And
maybe more senior generals, maybe generals with better political connections than Grant. Grant was more of a frontier type.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And not a politician.
Yes. And dressed the part of a frontier type. He certainly was not known for his elegance, but he was known for winning. And one of those, so many anecdotes about Grant, but one of them was that he helped save the life of his future opponent, Robert E. Lee, during the Mexican War.
Yes.
That might have caused things to turn out differently if he hadn't. But anyway, so a couple of things here. This is obviously an older version of Grant, but a couple of things that I want to particularly highlight. Because Grant experienced many failures in his life. He was a hugely successful general, and he was really the decisive factor in terms of winning the military aspect of the war. But you notice there's a lot of darkness, a lot of circles, furrows underneath the eyes. And that tells you a lot of the stress he was under, because he actually failed in many things in his life. He failed as a storekeeper, failed as a farmer, etc. He obviously took a lot of criticism. You notice he's got these vertical furrows, and you can see it in Cameron's portrait as well, these vertical furrows going up between the eyebrows. So when you see that, it tells you this is somebody with a very distinct perfectionist streak. It has a number of meanings, but perfectionism is one of them. So Grant was particularly skilled in planning his campaigns. Planning his battles. He thought things through very carefully and then took action. And the overall shape of his face is of a man who takes action. His bone structure is very clear. You'll see it particularly in Cameron's portrait there. The right right cheekbone is quite prominent, which tells you this is a man of energy. This is a man of drive. And this is a man who's determined to get things done. And one other particular thing you note with Grant here is there's a little sort of hollow at the bridge of the nose. Particularly, you can see it in the photograph. And when you see that on somebody, it tells you
right here.
Yeah, just right across the bridge of the nose, a little dip. Yeah. And when you see that on somebody, it tells you this is a man for whom time is valuable. So he was not a man for having his time wasted. He valued, if you had a meeting with Grant, you had to know why you were there, and there had to be action steps taken. So he was not a man for sitting around waiting for things to happen.
No, he certainly was not. In fact, it sounds as if you may already know this, but his first most successful role in the Army during the Mexican War was as a supply and logistics officer.
Yeah.
And so that kind of attention to detail and his drive to make sure that the frontline troops had everything they needed on time and in the right place, and he was very good at that, bears out your observations about him.
Yeah, which would also increase the feeling of loyalty from the men, because they knew they were being taken care of.